What up, guys? It is Nick. I just wanted to touch base. I said I was going to get a quick video out, so just wanted to try and get this in here. I actually have to record the whole thing over because whatever I recorded on the first time didn't seem to work. So I'll probably keep it pretty short and to the point here. I just kind of wanted to touch base, give you some more macro schematics, things I've been looking at, and what I see this comparing to. So here's a 1 year, 1 day. Pretty straightforward. Before I get into it, just got to preface, I'm not a financial advisor. I do have experience in the field, currently hold licenses, and not sponsored by a firm. So all this is just educated opinion from personal experience. So take it for what it is and choose your investments on your own account. So just want to start off. Here is the 1 year, 1 day. Actually, I think it's 3 year, 1 day, just to give us a little bit more backdrop here of the story we've been on forever. So just wanted to kind of show you from a macro standpoint. Here's the 1 year, 1 day. We'll kind of get into what I think this is down here and why I see the importance of this range. But laying on top here is just your OBV. I kind of try to track trends or similarities within the OBV to determine where we're at. Pretty interesting stuff. I've been saying that they've been stretching the tape, slowing the algo, pulling the supply. If you'll notice on that run up, we had a big break into some pretty high volume, 0.25 billion. So yeah, 250 million days of volume, and then they just sucked it dry again, and then the selling rose. So they're hitting out stop losses, and hitting out stop losses is automatically going to increase that sell volume. So when we broke that 1350 range that I was talking about, essentially it looked like it just got sucked down extremely easy. But to be honest, it wasn't wrong to be bullish in this time frame because we were pressing the top of the wedge again. And then once we got down to the corner, I was expecting a nice breakout here, 511, after earnings basically, or leading up into it. I expected us to kind of get this breakout and just kind of start our run, but of course broader market had different plans, so we just kind of roll with the punches and what we get. So broad market pulled us down. Once they got us slipped under this 1315, 1350-ish range. There's a lot of stop losses in this range. VPR is strong, but once they got those stop losses out, they attacked it pretty hard. Obviously we were all experienced the last 5 sessions or so, and then broke it down. So all they really did was took it off the top of this wedge after the breakout. This was extreme. I don't know. They're definitely going to get prosecuted for this, in my opinion. That's just way too blatant of a short ladder going on here. Literally that drags the broad market down, but that's for another video. But yeah, here's kind of your 1 year, 1 day. You got your 200 SMA, your 50 EMA. Every single time we break above that 50 EMA, we start getting to touchy levels and hit our breakouts. So above the 50 right here, hit our breakout. Above the 50, and then they just hit us on this trend line basically goes back. We'll see it here in a second. I think it's 7 years. So probably should have saw that one coming in hindsight if it was a perfect world, because not only were you trying to break that massive 200 SMA off of a 1290 push, basically, arguably you could say $20 push. So I should have expected that or been more prepared for it. I did lock out roughly 70K up here and then lost about 15K in house money. That's still a good net win. Allowed me to reallocate my portfolio, my risk, and where I was placing bets on the next run. So I do still have my 520s. There's heaviest on the $30 call. So we all saw what this morning brought, and I think that kind of reminded people of how quickly the script can get flipped here on these, because it was a strong movement. I hit some $14.50 calls I had out to, because it makes sense on this chart here. I hit some $14.50 calls I had to May 13th that expired tomorrow, which with that being the case, I was extremely impressed that it hit that hard. but I also knew that like that was what's been lying under this. So a lot of people locked out, got some good profits. I know I took a net of like 2,000% on this run on about 30 calls that I had. So still holding some, because what you can see here on this 20-day 1 hour chart is that it's pressing this 50 EMA extremely hard. And we broke through it, came back down, and they obviously like just laddered this down as hard as they could. And then after the fact, I came back in, put some of my own trend lines in on what I'm seeing kind of projection wise going into tomorrow. So with what's been going on since 5/5, just remember this date because it will come into play later on. We've really been getting shot down under, like they don't want anything to do with this above the 50 EMA. And I mentioned this in a tweet earlier today too. I want to say it's been 30 days since we were above an EMA and held it. I mean, arguably here 330. So since all of April, you could argue this guy, but clearly didn't stay up there that long, and it wasn't nothing near as dramatic as this. So I'm really intrigued to see like what's gonna come of this, because we're sitting right on this 50 EMA now, and that was a nasty push through it this morning off of a sub 10, very key psychological stop loss range, whatever you want to call it, for these guys to flip long. Hence Citadel's cute little tweet today. So like, I just think it's hilarious, because I know it was a knock. I know it was kind of, hey, your share price is as low as we wanted it. We just showed you. Now we're quote unquote stepping long. So it's a very interesting situation, because I know they're still going to be pressing it down and trying to control the squeeze as much as they can. But tomorrow's a big weekly candle close for me, and I'll show you why here in a second. But anyways, going into tomorrow, I'll post this on my Twitter too. These are the lines we're kind of looking at, and we'll get to it here in a second. But it has like clear zones through here on what it's trying to break out of and where the demand is matching the supply. Well, clearly demand just broke right through everything up here. I think there was some FTDs involved too, but then if you notice, they just sharp decline in supply. Like clearly you know the demand was there, because look at that closing hour candle. So they pulled the supply, and what happens is they park these orders, and then the last 15 to 30 minutes, which is what I mentioned, like power hour-ish time frame, this thing's lid lifted off, and it bounced off of this kind of fractal or speed line here, broke up, and it had the power to push an 1130 plus close, but like that velocity off of that severe of a downtrend is very bullish for me to see. And then what it did was it kind of caught its original speed line that it had like trouble hitting out of before. So we closed within that and kept riding it up in the after hours, and then the strong candle close is what I really like. It's almost a full body close right on the 50 EMA. So tomorrow I'm expecting them pre-market open, probably going to try and drag it down to this bottom support until retail can kind of step in. It's going to kind of do one of these movements up here, and then I could see it kind of spiking up in pre-market just with how we ended yesterday or today. So we'll probably spike up, come back down, kind of do some zigzagging, and then we could either break out and have a strong test on the green right away, which I think is pretty likely, but not like the first scenario. Or we can kind of break out right above here, touch this, come straight back down and push into this and kind of go sideways. Because max pain is 13, which is about here. So I'm not saying we're going to close above that, but I do want to close, and I'll show you here in a second why. Basically above this orange line, like I'll be happy with a 1230 close, I think is what I was looking at. 1230, yeah. So if we can close above 1230, that's really what I'm looking into tomorrow, and I can kind of show you why here. So yeah, here's the 10-year, and those are those same lines that we have drawn in saw something very similar to this on this speed line up to 34 range. So that's kind of where the macro comes from. You guys have seen that plenty of times. But what really intrigues me here is that this weekly, like I said, we were at the top of the macro wedge. We rode it, gave it a strong push towards out, and then they just kind of clipped it off the top on this 34, which literally goes all the way back to 1226 of 16. That's the 34 range that they clipped it off of, and it was very smart of them. To be honest, I hated it so much, but like I did lock out, like I mentioned, and got to reposition. So that's the biggest thing at the end of the day, and that's kind of what I'm doing here with these Mays very soon. I'm hoping tomorrow maybe gives us a chance, a little lid lift to press that 1350 mark. I could see it early on and then kind of consolidate right about 1290 to 1315 range. So we'll post more on that tomorrow. But the big thing is this macro wedge. Like I said, we rode it down, and then once they got us under that 1350, 1330 range, they were able to hit stop losses and just rail this off the top down to the bottom of the wedge. But it did look severe, but what happened here was it never left the bottom of the wedge. So because of that, it's just an extreme over-exaggeration of both broad market dynamics and them just hitting all these stop losses down through here, not being able to do anything because they're parking orders. But we had an extreme shift in volume today on the micro that's really intriguing me, that's the transition, because that's the same thing that happened before the last one. We hit a little run up, had that pullback, they pulled the supply dry, and then we had that one strong day off of 1290. No one expected it, no one thought it'd go that low, but it was a high volume day to give us that volume rotation. Day following was even higher, and you know what happened after that. So what I'm looking for is a close within this rhombus type shape here, because right now the weekly is putting it off the bottom, but I mentioned this in the Discord that it's going to tick off of here, and then I'm looking for this weekly close above this red line here, this ascending support, because what that will do is it's just going to narrow kind of this macro wedge, but it's also going to bring this in, and then within a week, like 1 to 2 weeks, like I think we're going to get another nice big pop out, and we'll gauge it. We'll see what happens. Could break off a 1884, which is this line here, and kind of consolidate a little bit, then press 22.5, consolidate, and then go. But like 22.5 to 22.8, the VPR is extremely low still. So once we get through 22.5, it's going to go straight up to 28 range, and then this is where things could get interesting, because it could break 28, press like a $30 range, because you're going to be moving at that point, come back, consolidate a little bit, and then test the 34 and 33 too, because you want this movement to be healthy. Like obviously we want it to go straight up, and like it has been stretched out enough to do so. But what I'm really just looking for right now for this week is if we get a close above, honestly it's just above 1210, 1208 range. If we just get a close above 1208 or 12 and have this full body be within or above this rising support line, I'm extremely bullish going into next week. So kind of what I'm looking at here from a macro, just waiting on this last candle to close to see what it's going to be able to give us, because if we can get that close, I think that sets us up perfect for next week, especially if markets are rotating broad market wise. So keeping an eye there. And then just another quick kind of thing that I've been doing the last couple of days or experimenting with is switch this back. Is kind of like market hedges without going heavy on puts or calls for SPY, because they can get pricey and you can get burnt on them pretty dang easy. So what I'm looking for is like obviously here's your 5-5 date that I mentioned, that big push up through your 50 EMA and your 200, and they just brought it straight back down because anything above this 50 is dangerous on both AMC or GME. So as I was saying, like kind of to protect myself or add a play for when I'm bullish, AMC, the TNA Direxion shares, it's a 3x leverage that basically tracks the bullishness of like the IWM. So like if you think AMC is about to go and the market's gonna rip, but you just like aren't for sure on some SPY calls, a good alternative, TNA, is more of a 3x leverage fund that tracks the IWM, I believe. So you can kind of hit those bull runs because IWM is a whole nother beast, but it'll be 3x leverage, so there's not going to be as much volume in the chain. But with these shares, I've been able to find a lot of success on like short swings. So if you're just trying to hit something quick, lower price, to the upside, and you're in a bullish position with AMC as well, I really like TNA calls. So that's for an upside movement. And then on SPY, we have what's called TZA, and TZA is essentially, wow, that's quite the distribution there. Jeez, it's super odd. I might have to come back to that. So TZA is basically the inverse to SPY. So if you think SPY is going to go down, or if you just want to open up hedges and SPY puts are loaded too high on IV or premiums because they can get expensive just to even hedge, TZA has been a great one for me. If you buy calls on it, you expect SPY to be dropping because this is your 3x leveraged inverse ETF. So that's a good one just to kind of hedge with, relatively cheap on the option side. Just always be careful, know it's a hedge, it's 3x leveraged, but at the same time, it is usually cheaper than SPY puts, and TNA calls are usually cheaper than SPY calls. So just some other options I've been messing with, broad market dynamic wise, but other than that, just gonna keep it short. Expecting some heavy movement coming out of AMC within the next probably 3 to 5 sessions, but again, I just want to see what tomorrow does and how it closes, and we will roll from there. So thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon. Have a good one.